For over a century, the Royal Air Force has stood ready to protect the UK, responding to threats, preventing conflict, and delivering aid. Their airfields have served as vital lifelines in times of war. But for many, they were places of final departure, poignant reminders of bravery, resilience, and loss. This video was inspired by you, my viewers. After exploring road ghost stories in previous episodes, I received countless comments and messages about the spectral echoes of wartime. Tales of ghostly pilots, phantom engineers, and even eerie sightings of aeroplanes that should no longer exist captured my imagination. Come with me then on a journey into the haunted histories of some of the UK's RAF airfields. With respect for the courage and sacrifice of those who served, we'll explore the legends and lore that linger in their wake. Let's take flight into the past and discover what remains when history and mystery collide. I couldn't start an exploration of airfield ghosts with anything but RAF Bircham Newton. Situated on the north coast of Norfolk, not far from King's Lynn, this former base saw decades of service before closing in 1962. Today, its buildings hum with a different kind of activity, serving as the site of the Construction Industry Training Board's National Construction College. But for those with a taste for the paranormal, or perhaps a long memory, Bircham Newton is known for more than its wartime history. In 1977, a cassette tape titled Real Ghosts brought the eerie reputation of this airfield to the forefront. Side A featured the haunting of Bircham Newton Aerodrome, while Side B delved into the ghost of Borley Church. The tape claimed to document 2 genuine psychic investigations where genuine ghost sounds were recorded, with assurances that nothing has been faked. For some, it sparked curiosity. For others, it caused sleepless nights. The origins of this tape go back to the early 1970s. In December 1971, local paper, the Lynn News and Advertiser, reported a chilling encounter at Bircham Newton. A film crew, staying at the construction college to produce a management training video, claimed not only that they saw a ghost, but also recorded the unexplained sounds of people, machinery, and aircraft that weren't there. Kevin Gary, an assistant sound technician, recounted his experience. While playing squash, he heard the distinct sound of footsteps above him in the viewing gallery. When he turned, he was stunned to see the ghostly figure of an RAF serviceman. Before his eyes, the apparition vanished. Shaken and terrified, Kevin ran to his colleagues, who decided to investigate. They placed a tape recorder in the squash court building and left it running for about half an hour. What they captured left them astonished. The metallic clangs and dragging sounds of unseen objects, muffled voices in conversation, the distant engine of an old plane flying overhead, and even the disembodied voice of a woman. The recording was later sent to the BBC, who played it on air, causing a flurry of letters from listeners claiming their pets had reacted with fear to the eerie sounds. A medium named John Sutton visited the site in 1971. He claimed to make contact with 3 airmen who, he said, died in a crash roughly 30 years earlier. Around the same time, the BBC sent a female reporter to investigate. Her account describes intense cold, strange noises, and inexplicable problems with her tape recorder, which functioned perfectly once she returned to the studio. Locals began writing to the papers with their own theories about the haunting, sharing memories of wartime accidents, and speculating about the restless spirits of those who may have perished on the site. It seems that since World War II, Bircham Newton has been a hotspot for unexplained phenomena. tales abound of haunted rooms, heavy footsteps, banging doors, icy hands brushing against unsuspecting residents, sheets yanked from beds, and curtains inexplicably torn. Perhaps most unsettling of all are the recurring sightings of a figure in an RAF uniform calmly walking through a solid wall, and a car of smiling airmen that crashes again and again into the rear of a hangar. Paul Lee, in his book The Ghosts of King's Lynn and West Norfolk, does an excellent job of debunking some of what has become established as fact about the Bircham Newton ghosts, especially the claims made by medium John Sutton during his 1971 séance. Yet his investigations have also uncovered fresh accounts, stories of shadowy figures, unexplained noises, and the lingering sensation of being watched. Even as some of its myths unravel, this airfield refuses to give up all its secrets. Are these tales just imagination, or is something, or someone, still tethered to this place, unable to leave? Bircham Newton is far from unique in its haunted reputation. Across the UK, other airfields carry similar stories of spectral airmen and mysterious occurrences. One of the most famous is RAF Montrose. In 1912, the British government devised plans for air stations operated by the newly formed Royal Flying Corps. In 1913, the first of these opened at Montrose on the east coast of Scotland. By 1914, with the outbreak of war, the airfield had transformed into a vital training station for the fledgling force. The first sightings of a spectral airman at RAF Montrose date back to 1916. Major Cyril Foggin, a senior flying instructor, claimed to have seen the ghost multiple times. Other witnesses reported similar sightings. A ghostly figure vanishing through closed doors and appearing, seated and silent, in their rooms. And there was an accepted explanation for who this airman was. Desmond Arthur, an exceptional pilot who died in a crash under controversial circumstances. In 1920, Desmond Arthur's friend C.G. Gray wrote about the haunting in the Aeroplane magazine. Describing Arthur as one of the finest pilots in the world, Gray explained that this skillful and gallant officer was the victim of faulty workmanship on the plane he fell from in May 1913. An initial accident report agreed that the crash was the fault of this structural flaw. But in 1916, an inquiry committee suggested Arthur's incompetence or recklessness had caused his death. Gray believed the haunting began as Arthur's response to this affront to his honour. In January 1917, an addendum was issued clearing Arthur's name, and Gray speculated that his friend was finally at peace. Supernatural activity, however, returned to the site after the outbreak of World War II. One unsettling account comes from 1940. A hurricane pilot returned from a night sortie, furious that an antiquated biplane had nearly caused a collision during his landing attempts. The station commander assured him no other planes had been airborne that night, and there hadn't been a biplane at Montrose for years. The mysterious figure of a man in old-fashioned flying kit, complete with goggles, was reported on many occasions during the 1940s, appearing at all times of day to fitters, instructors, even staff serving tea. He would make no noise and never responded to questions or greetings, vanishing from sight. RAF Montrose closed on the 4th of June 1952, but years later, Sir Peter Masefield had a terrifying encounter whilst flying over the site. Piloting his own Chipmunk aircraft home from an industry talk, he was confronted mid-air by a BE-2, a biplane of the exact model Desmond Arthur had been in when he died. Masefield described how the ghostly plane's top wing collapsed and its nose tipped into a steep dive, ejecting its pilot in a flailing descent. Only after landing, shaken by the experience, did Masefield note the date, the 27th of May, 1963. Exactly 50 years to the day since Desmond Arthur's death. Montrose, it seems, with its long history and spectral reminders of the cost of war, is a place where the past refuses to rest. If Montrose and Bircham Newton are haunted by the echoes of history and sacrifice, RAF Biggin Hill magnifies both. Situated south of London, it had a critical role during the Second World War and has become one of the most iconic airfields in British history. By the summer of 1940, Biggin Hill was a vital Spitfire station, playing a key role in the Battle of Britain. Between August 1940 and January 1941, the airfield was attacked 12 times by the Luftwaffe in a fierce effort to cripple British air power. With the fall of Belgium, Holland and France earlier that year, Germany launched massive bombing raids to clear the way for a full-scale invasion by its forces. Against the Luftwaffe's 2,243 aircraft, the RAF had fewer than 600 frontline fighters, mainly Spitfires and Hurricanes. Yet Biggin Hill and its brave defenders held the line during some of the fiercest fighting in the battle for Britain's skies. Perhaps it's no wonder that such a place has accumulated so many ghostly tales. In the village, there are stories of lost airmen appearing to ask for directions. Dressed in RAF uniforms, they vanish before the astonished eyes of witnesses. On the airfield itself, figures in flight suits are said to linger near the runway, while others appear in the chapel of St. George. One of the most enduring accounts involves the distinctive sound of a Spitfire's engine roaring low over Biggin Hill. This isn't a timed display or a vintage aircraft event. It's something heard by many at all times of day and night. Some believe it is the sound of this iconic plane in a victory roll, a joyous celebration of a hard-won triumph reverberating across the years. Other stories tell of spectral airmen who seem to remain bound to the area. In 1963, a van driver reported being waved down by a man in full flying kit, complete with a leather helmet. As the driver slowed to stop, the figure vanished. A sentry reported an unsettling encounter to his medical officer, convinced he was hallucinating after witnessing a man walk through a solid gate. Another account describes a hitchhiking pilot in World War II flying gear, thumbing a lift back to the airfield. Local legend claims this ghost is that of a pilot who crashed his plane during the war, and that the whine of his Merlin engine can still be heard. Though the RAF left Biggin Hill in October 1992, its legacy lives on. A haunting reminder of when Britain's fate rested on the bravery of a few. Lincolnshire, often called Bomber County, is known for its many wartime airfields. Its flat landscape made it an ideal location for bases during the Second World War. Among these was RAF Waltham, officially known as RAF Grimsby, a station that saw thousands of sorties during the war, often with heavy losses. At first home to Wellington bombers, Waltham later became the base of 100 Squadron, flying the formidable Lancaster bombers. These aircraft took part in critical campaigns, including the Battle of the Ruhr in June 1943, flying at 21,000 feet over Cologne and Dusseldorf. During this month alone, 100 Squadron lost 9 bomber crews, a terrible loss. After its closure in 1952, Waltham became a quiet, overgrown site sold off for industrial use. Yet the airfield retains some of its wartime past, both in memory and in ghostly phenomena. One of Waltham's most chilling stories took place inside an old hangar. Late one night, an employee of E.W. Nickerson & Co., working alone to repair grain sacks, suddenly found himself face to face with an airman in 1940s flying gear. But the figure had no head. Terrified, the man fled, screaming for help. His colleagues found him in shock, and he was later hospitalised. Some say his hair turned white and fell out shortly after. Whatever happened that night, he never returned to work. Another haunting occurred in 1969. A young woman living in a new house built by the gates of the old airfield awoke to find a misty figure at the foot of her bed. Dressed in a military uniform, he had ginger hair and only one arm. She froze. Without a word, the figure turned and walked through her wardrobe, vanishing as he went. Even today, strange occurrences are reported at Waltham. Dog walkers claim to see figures in vintage RAF uniforms wandering the site, disappearing without a trace. Others hear the sound of Merlin engines echoing across the old airfield, though no plane is ever seen. RAF Waltham, abandoned after the tragedy of war, carries a sadness, a legacy of loss. It seems the weight of the past is still felt, with not all those who served here able to move on. As we close this journey through Britain's haunted airfields, we're reminded that history doesn't always remain confined to the past. These tales of pilots, airmen, and engines long silenced are more than just stories of the supernatural. They're tributes to the bravery and resilience of those who once called these airfields home. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the haunting presence of these places lies in their ability to stir something within us, a connection to those who served, and a reminder of the cost of freedom. If you've enjoyed this exploration of haunted skies, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may you find wonder in the history around you, and perhaps, just perhaps, feel the faint whispers of those who walked before us.